to do that. And cool. Yeah, so backend mod 2 right now only has 22 of us. So I would say the majority of the students are here, and I'm not that interested in waiting on people that are late. So yeah, I think what I want to say is I've had some of these students that are going to present to you today, and I'm super interested to hear these presentations. So would love your engagement. BE Mod 2, be thinking of questions that you might want to ask. Each session will have like a presentation time and then a Q&A time directly after. And I don't really want to hold y'all too accountable on time, but if you're starting to go over, I'll probably like just let you know that you're over. And you all, like, presenters, know what your time constraints are. So yeah, with that, I think we can get started. I'll kick it over to Travis and Saryn.
Alrighty, let me share my screen. So we're doing, we want to talk about, not the flux capacitor. That was my other idea. We're talking about.
I mean, we could go with that too if you want.
No, let's do this. I'm more prepared. Today, so I'm Travis, and I'm presenting with Saryn.
I'm Saryn. Yep, she, her, backend mod 4.
I am also backend mod 4, and we're going to be talking about what we call the brain tech connection, which actually is more connected with the idea that Elon Musk made popular called the NEURALINK.
All right, so points of talk, we're just going to go high level overview of NEURALINK, what some of the kind of positive possibilities that could arise if this becomes a thing. But then also talk about some of the ethical implications that come along with that.
So first off, for anybody who doesn't know, what is the NEURALINK? It's essentially this idea where you get a chip of some sort inserted into your, right beneath your skull, actually. Some ideas are right beneath the skin, but essentially it needs access to your brain. And the idea would be that it allows the user to directly interact with different devices using their thoughts. So instead of actually moving a keyboard or typing on a keyboard or moving a mouse, you'd use your thoughts in your brain. And it's just kind of like a simple diagram of how that might work.
And sort of the business case and the idea behind it is to launch with compatibility included for platforms such as Apple iOS and Google Android. And sort of a snapshot like definition of what this idea is would be a way to upload your brain and memories to the cloud.
I totally forgot this was your slide. Sorry, Saryn.
Hey, it's all good.
This is actually, so for anybody who's nervous also about this idea and whether or not this would be a thing, it's already actually being used in a way. This is called deep brain stimulation, and it's used for patients who have severe Parkinson's, and it works really well. So and this is just like a simple kind of oversimplification of how it might work or why even this would work. Computers, we all know, work from essentially on and off switches. It's all binary, right? It's either on or off as long as we're not talking about quantum computers. So the idea would be, if you have a thought, which happen with electricity, electrical impulses, it could stimulate a transistor on the motherboard of the chip, and that could do all kinds of things. It could do various things that you want it to do. And then some of the cool possibilities of this idea would be, I don't know if any of you have seen Doctor Strange, but in that movie, he's able to do astral projections and able to read while he's sleeping. This is something I'm really interested in, being able to read while sleeping or being able to do things while you're sleeping, but you're still getting the regenerative effects of sleeping. And then Also just this idea of downloading information, which we've all thought about, I'm sure.
Okay, so the potential positive impact of this technology is undoubtedly exciting, but I think it's also important to address some of the ethical complications that may be raised. And so this first point here with who owns an individual's Neuralink data. If a third-party application, such as Apple iOS or Google Android that they would partner with, if they have access to someone's, I mean, essentially it's like their back-end brain data, then how do we differentiate what information is staying on a personal brain device and then what information is getting transmitted to the app's vendor? Another one, cybersecurity. So just like anything with Apple iOS or Google Android, there's the risk of hackers and security breaches. So it's important to kind of think about like what the potential implications of that are. And then lastly, accessibility. So I don't know if we touched on this, but I know that one of the original ideas and intentions behind this technology has been to help individuals that might suffer from some sort of brain disorder and make some things either accessible to them or easier for them that right now are either not possible or it's just extremely difficult. So, and Travis, I'm sorry, I can't remember if you touched on this, but we've read too that like somebody's heart rate or their pulse might be able to kind of be impacted by this technology or essentially controlled by the individual, which could be really great for people that need that. But the question sort of becomes, should this be accessible to individuals that might meet a medical diagnosis, or if we open it up to the rest of the world, what would that look like? And how do we prevent, like, let's say an athlete from maybe abusing this technology to improve their performance? And then in general, just us humans, how would we prevent somebody from abusing this and just sort of climbing the success ladder and trying to get a leg up on everybody else? So I think those are kind of the main implications of Neuralink.
And lastly, we kind of would like it to be open more for a discussion if time allows. Just curious, out of everybody who's listening, would anybody willingly get the implant? And if you would, why?
And if you wouldn't, why not?
But more importantly, if you would, why?
But more importantly, if you wouldn't, why?
Yeah, we've got like 6 minutes, I'd say.
Cool.
It seems tricky because for the people who get it, there obviously are a whole, or at least like first generation of devices, there's a ton of risks. But after a while, in order to stay relevant and to compete, like if Travis is reading a book a night and I have to either, take my waking hours of productivity and dedicate that to reading or being productive, how am I supposed to keep up in a professional sense with Travis? I'm almost like forced to choose between poverty or being like a second-class citizen, or I don't know, falling behind, I guess.
Yeah.
Hard. I don't know.
Interesting.
In addition to that, I don't know if y'all have done or seen anything about this, but do you know what it might cost? Like, yeah, are only the wealthiest people going to be able to get these implants? Have you seen anything along those lines?
I don't know if you have, Saryn, but I will say that the deep brain stimulation surgery for Parkinson's, out of pocket is astronomical. And mainly it's because you have to hire you don't hire, you get the hospital to do it. But if you were to do it privately, which this would likely be elective for a lot of people. We're talking about it's really the the neurosurgeon. That's the main person, the main doctor doing it. So like you have to pay them a lot of money. That's most of the cost. We're talking like hundreds of thousands of dollars probably as of right now.
Yeah, and I have not gotten as deep into it or seen anything around pricing yet, but my guess would be that it's expensive, and I would think that if we open this up to everybody, it's sort of like people that might be more privileged already get access to this technology and become even kind of more privileged, if you want to use that word. So, but yeah, no hard numbers or anything yet.
I'm not sure if it still applies, but it looks like Sam Y had something to say.
I was just going to agree with you, Matthew, of the implications of if you were to extrapolate with agreeing to the idea that once you reach peak like the peak goal of NEURALINK is to optimizing the individual based on data and statistics given. We talked about in our university is a pretty hot topic for what will happen to people who don't get it, who don't agree to, and that moral idea of should everyone get it, and if people have a choice not to get it, then they will become second-class citizens, like what you just mentioned, just because of the possibilities that NEURALINK should offer into optimizing. Let's say you'll know so much deep information about yourself as to like even when you believe you don't get the best sleep, at that point that you're able to adjust your whole body to the best everything in terms of biological rhythm. So we came to a conclusion, I believe, that there will be second-class citizens at that point if morals are agreed on, in terms of people don't have to have NEURALINK essentially, or they can opt out. Just wanted to point that out.
Let's take the next minute to wrap up. Go ahead, Gus.
Yeah, I think one of the things that like really like scares me about these conversations is how lightly people tend to take like the concept of like, let me just like cut open your skull and put something in there, and like, you know, and I think that like our current system for like regulating like experimental medical treatment is like woefully inadequate. Like there was, I don't know, there's an article in the New York Times maybe a couple years ago about people who received hand transplants and like how they received like no support, they weren't followed up with. And it turned out that like a huge proportion of them had like really severe complications like kidney failure from the anti-rejection drugs. So it's like we have no system in place to like actually safeguard people's health. And when it comes to like experimental medicine like this, and so it's scary when people are like, yeah, so we're just gonna like cut open your head, but like actually we have no system in place to protect you. And like, if we as a society pursue this, like many people are going to die or experience like serious long-term harm from complications from this. So it's scary to think about without having other systems of support in place.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah, thanks everybody for coming and participating.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all. All right, Matthew, you are up next.
All right. Can everybody see my screen okay? Perfect. My name is Matthew Lane. I'm a Mod 4 front-end student at Turing. He, him are my pronouns. And something that I think a lot of people, sort of a hot topic that's come to the fore, is some of the implications about how we serve up content, how we organize our internet, sort of the underlying business models that are popular and how that affects society. So today, just a brief overview. I'm going to talk about what the free content model is, a brief history, some positives and negatives, and then some alternatives that maybe you haven't considered. So what is the free content model. In this case, it is a business strategy used to pay the costs of a server and the employees that run it. Free, in this case, doesn't refer to, you know, the server does have costs. It still is a monetized system, but to the end user, they can access it without having to input a credit card or pay a monthly subscription, anything like that. For the purposes of this, I did separate out sort of like offset cost websites like Amazon that are like shops where you don't pay any money to see what they offer, but the whole point is that they want to get your money. So I wouldn't call that free necessarily, and they don't really serve up content. Anyways, I provided some examples here at the bottom, some of the most popular ones that I'm certain everybody's used. YouTube, Reddit, Wikipedia is technically a free content model, Facebook, and DuckDuckGo, one of my favorite search engines. There is a small distinction to be made. A lot of people, when they think about free content model, they get it confused with the open internet, which is sort of like an FCC or like government regulatory issue. And those are related, but distinct, and I probably won't be covering that today. Just a real quick history. There's a lot here, so please read it if you're interested. But the gist is, culturally, the free content model really took off when the US military took over the like up and coming infrastructure of back then what was like several different networks that were the precursors to the internet. They, being the military, wanted to make sure that this couldn't be abused. And so people were forced contractually to have non-commercial anything anywhere on the internet. And this was strictly enforced. Things were taken down. Sometimes there were like military discipline actions for people who abused this. However, this was the exact network that was then sort of handed off to the public through Congress in like the early 90s, late 80s. And that culture, the people working on it, sort of was the foundation, right? There was this university that was offering up free content. Then the military came in and said, hey, don't make money off of this. And people were accustomed to, you know, free email. And so it just sort of went from there. People were already accustomed to not paying. And so it was a hard ask to change that. And then, you know, the internet developed years and years later, decades go on, and now we are where we are. Like I mentioned, Facebook, YouTube, all those things do offer up a great platform. There are a lot of positive things to say about the design. For one, there is now an unprecedented access to information that never before has been achieved, like cross classes, internationally. It doesn't matter who you are. If you have the ability to connect to the internet, which is a fairly small cost up front, then you now have access that our ancestors would have never dreamed about. Similarly, if you've got something to say and you can do it in a way that is interesting, you can get your word out. You can be heard. You can exert some sort of control and power over our lives, our communities. One thing that's great about the free content model is there is a huge incentive to make things interesting, to make them appealing. The reasons being, if they're free, if people can access them for free, typically that means the cost to produce them is low. That means there's a ton of variety. There's a lot of competition in, you know, there's only so much time in a day. There's so many memes you can look at, so many cat pictures to download. So only the best ones generally will get shared. And therefore, if it's good, it'll rise. If it's bad, or I should say uninteresting and interesting, then it'll sink. Without getting too stuck on the economics of things, free content model, because of the competition, is fairly monopoly resistant, which is, you know, something we struggle with in a lot of other sectors of our current lives. Censorship resistant. Again, there's so much content out there. Unless you are China and literally own your own version of the internet, it feels impossible, right? The Barbra Streisand effect. The more you try and censor something, the more people will talk about that controversy, and then ultimately it'll backfire. However, today, of course, we are talking about a lot of the negatives. it sucks to compete against this stuff, right? Monetization is always going to be there. There will always be costs. People aren't doing this for free after all. That most of the time it is a business. And so when the content is free, typically they are getting something off of you visiting their site. There is now more than ever, bait and switch, what is it, clickbait, is so popular because they don't have to actually make things interesting all the way through or good or high quality. They just have to get you to click on their website. And so there's now a ton of abuse of like the system and trust going on. And because of this, people are also trying to manipulate you at like a fundamental neurological level. And a lot of people, especially newcomers, children, teenagers who don't even realize this, are being manipulated. And so there's a lot of autonomy that people are losing and intentionality, through addiction, essentially. One of the bad things, sort of the inverse to making interesting content, just because it's interesting doesn't mean it's high quality, as you've maybe seen with like Fox News and Breitbart, and not to get too political, but certain political, nonsense, which isn't academically strict, gets completely, highlighted and reshared and dominates our current thoughts in a very large sense. Because of the free content model, there isn't a central authority to combat this. And so, again, it's censorship resistant, but sometimes censorship can be a good thing, which, it's a spectrum. Too much censorship, too little censorship. You want to be right in the middle, that Goldilocks zone. And yeah, so lots of bad things that could come from this as well. I'd like to sort of briefly touch on some other models that probably you're familiar with. Subscription model, I think, is probably one of my favorites. It lets you directly support people who you think do well. It is, I think, the heart of capitalism, the positive part of capitalism anyways, in that if people do a good job, if you're a good faith actor, you reward them with your money so that they can keep on doing what you're doing. There's a couple different looks of ways that happens, but typically it's through stuff that most people can't make. Free content model typically relies on, the foundation of it is user-generated content. And in order for user-generated content to be good, they have to be able to make something fairly low cost, fairly low skill. And, movies, TV shows, writing scripts, making sets, anime, drawing stuff, making high quality music albums, even like access to news across the world that people don't have. All of this is sort of a barrier to just people making their own, which is why the subscription model, at least economically, can work, because there's a scarcity there. There are a couple different ways that this can work, and I'll let you sort of read the slide and maybe infer just for the sake of time. There's also the sponsored model, which is strange. It's not very popular. It does exist. Typically, it's the cost is just sunk for some reason. Typically, those are like government resources or like parks that want to advertise their hours or things like that. I listed a couple different things here. SEO boosting is, I think, is a weird unknown one, which just for the sake of time, I'll say that you should probably look into, because SEO is so fascinating. Perfect. And then lastly, I'd sort of like to open this up for questions and maybe talk about things. Perfect. And let me make sure. Yeah. So this is the end of the slide. Here's some things you can do. What do you guys think? What do you guys support? What do you think the ethics of monetizing the internet are?
We can chat till like right about 27.
Sorry, what was that?
I was just saying we can take the discussion till about 27.
Gotcha.
I got an opinion.
I
love it. I love it. I think it's great. That's something that I've been considering for a while, is just how can I personally get around not having my data mined while still using technology. And I do understand that, just like in your talk, there is still probably going to be some data mining, even if I pay, but I think it'll be intentional. Not intentional. It'll be under my awareness rather than using Facebook, and it's free. I don't know if you mentioned this, but on Netflix, they have that TV show or that movie, Social Networking or something like that.
Social dilemma.
Social dilemma, yes, thank you. Where they say if you can't find the product, then you are it, or something like that. It's crazy to think about, but thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's hard because we don't want to get rid of a lot of the good. I would say my big suggestion, if I could just transmit a thought globally, it's if you can, really, it's so unnatural. And even for me, it's a new thing, but bring out your wallet whenever you go on the internet. Think about spending money on stuff that you want to support. I think we're in a generation that's so unfamiliar, but it used to be that was the only model. People couldn't give things away for free. And so if we were to ever really reverse sort of some of, like Travis said, some of these negligent practices of, you know, abusing users and obstructing privacy, start paying for things. I'm a big fan of, good content creators. And the only way that they can really thrive and that business model can take off is if there's a marked change in what works.
Cool. Appreciate you, Matthew. Next up, we've got Nicole, and we'll take a short break after Nicole's presentation.
Okay, can everyone see my screen? You can give me a thumbs up. Cool. I'm gonna move the chat over here so I can see it as well. I notoriously forget to check it when I'm presenting, so. Okay. So if in the chat, if you've heard of CRISPR, could you type in a yes? Okay, cool. So a lot of people have some experience with it. So today my talk is on CRISPR. So first we're going to talk about what is it. Some people might not know, and that's okay. What the benefits and the dangers are for CRISPR, as well as how software developers play a role in it, which is something I discovered as I was doing some research for this talk specifically. So definitely enlightening. So here I have on the right just a little image of visual for you to get an understanding of what CRISPR does. So what it is technology that allows you to edit the genome, like one gene at a time, basically. And this began in embryos where people were trying to determine which genes were responsible for causing diseases down the line in someone's life. And also used to remove unfavorable genes from the genome itself. So in the chat, if you can put a yes or no if you've heard of designer babies. I feel like it's a pretty common topic, but if you're not in the medical field, it might be a foreign topic as well. Cool, okay. So some of the benefits of CRISPR is that it can be used in research to cure diseases. It can also be used to treat cell-specific gene disorders or diseases such as sickle cell anemia. And it can also be used to remove these disease-causing genes from the entire human race, which is the goal of CRISPR, essentially. Obviously, that would take many, many, many years, but the idea is that it would start with some people, and then it would be removed from their genetic inheritance from their family. So some of the dangers is that even though you're going in there and you're removing a gene specifically, that doesn't necessarily mean or guarantee that you're always going to remove the correct one. There's a lot going on with your DNA and your genome in general. And so if you accidentally take the wrong one out, that could cause so many other issues. It can cause like a cancer issue. It can cause other disorders that people aren't even aware of yet. So while you're trying to remove something for the good of the person involved, it might also cause an issue. So that's just something to keep in mind. And once there is a problem in the genome, it's really hard to control it and ensure that that person can move forward and not worry about the side effects. So I hope you guys like my meme. I don't have many pictures in my slideshow, but This also is kind of similar to how the NEURALINK that Saryn and Travis were talking about with the class, the issues with differences in social classes and things like that. So on the right, it says, how do I put this? I was created by professionals using highly advanced technology. You were just made. And so this idea is that with designer babies, if you are removing genes to make them better off in any way, that can lead to some issues with equity in moving forward in life. So for example, if 2 babies have sickle cell anemia and one baby's family is able to get involved with CRISPR and get that removed, the outcomes vary greatly depending on what you have exposure to. So, and you might be wondering, like, what does software have to do with this? Again, I didn't know prior to researching this, but there's something called the single guide RNA. And I'm not going to get too deep into science with this, just so you guys know what the term is. So basically, it is designed by software developers, and it's built to provide a guide as the CRISPR technology is being used in the genome, so that they have higher accuracy when they are removing a gene from the genome itself. And it also minimizes any side effects that might happen as the wrong target might be approached. So it just provides a better experience for CRISPR. So there's this company called Synthego Genome Engineering Solutions, and you can look it up if you're interested. There are also some others called Desktop Genetics and Benchling, but Synthego is the one that I found that has been contributing to in the software realm at least. So here are just some statistics on Synthego. They provide up to 97% editing efficiency for the genome, and they also provide the lowest chance of off-target editing. And then they also have genomes and species on record that they can use as reference to build their single guide RNA. And so I'm gonna put these in the chat. I found a GitHub repository that actually has resources for this, if anyone's interested in checking it out. I just put it in the chat for you. But basically, it's updated pretty recently. It was just updated on the 16th of December, so about a month ago. And it gets pretty science specific, but there are, like Python is being used for this one. Let's see which other ones, web server, Python again. I saw a lot of Java as well. And I have another one for you to check out too. It's called a bioconductor. And I just put that link in the chat as well. This is just a specific one that's used for the Cas9, which is the most popular model of CRISPR. And there's a developers tab here that you can check out and see like what people are doing and how they're building these things. So when we as software developers are thinking about contributing to a company that does this kind of thing, we have to think about what the rewards are and what the risks may be for us as developers and for the product and the recipients of the product. Whether or not we feel it's a viable product or something that is ethically sound is another thing. And I mentioned before that embryos were kind of like the start of this because they weren't considered like fully developed humans yet. But now they're trying to shift the focus toward building cures for cancer. So I have a couple questions, and also you can feel free to ask me any questions. I'm not an expert on this topic by any means, but I'm interested in it, so I might have some answers for you. The first one is, would you agree to work on sgRNA, which is the portion of the CRISPR technology that involves software? So does anyone want to speak on that or have any insight? Liam says, yeah, probably not gonna lie.
I got some.
Cool.
What's interesting is I actually thought about talking about this, but I'm just not sure. I think you did a good job of explaining it. I feel very split, in all honesty. I mean, on the one hand, like diseases and whatnot, like cancer, this would be great. On the other hand, I'm thinking it'd be so dope if I could like change some genes so that I could be just slightly taller, or just like be able to build muscle just a little bit easier, or maybe whatever I eat could turn into muscle. And I'm like, that'd be cool. But then if everybody got it, it wouldn't be cool anymore. And now we've put more danger on society. And what about people who can't afford it? I don't know. But it's going to happen. It's happening now. I just don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah, I learned about this briefly in college, like maybe 5 years ago. So I can't even imagine how much it's progressed recently. Anyone else have any thoughts before I move on to the next one?
I just wanted to make a comment about this is like a lot of power that we're taking. Like, and you know, like right now we don't have, you can't control what your baby looks like or will be like, but using this technology, you could potentially decide a lot more things about humans, right? And Travis, something I heard was like, for example, let's say you're going to have a baby and the genetic results say that they're going to be deaf. Will you edit their genes? I don't know if deafness is genetic, but just saying, like, will you edit their genes so that they don't have to live differently than other people? So then there's a lot of communities that have like disabilities that maybe they don't see them as disabilities, that feel like they will be like completely wiped out by this kind of technology because parents may not choose to have children like them. So it's kind of a scary thing to think about.
Yeah, especially if power is placed in the wrong hands. And more times than not, it is. So
Yeah.
It's choosing someone else's life for them. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like especially if it's an embryo, like they don't get any say in what happens to them. I didn't even think about that. That's a really good like ethical thought. Yeah.
So just based on time, we've got to wrap. But I enjoyed this presentation a lot and the conversation.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
What was I gonna say? So I think we should take like 3 minutes, not like a super long break. So let's come back at 41 and we'll get started. And if y'all want to keep chatting, feel free.
Hey, Angela, are you taking a break?
Yeah, I'm gonna go super quick.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it.
All right, it is 41. So let's get back into it. Up next, we've got Cam.
Cam, you're muted, buddy.
You're still muted. Okay, now you're unmuted.
Now?
Now we got you.
Okay, my computer mic has been acting weird. All right. So this presentation is called Hey, Where's My Car? Little background on this. At the time of this presentation, about a month ago, there was a big hack that came out on Tesla. And then also pretty interesting that just recently Elon Musk became the world's richest man. So Tesla is definitely on the up and up. They're obviously the leading global manufacturer of plug-in and battery electric passenger vehicles. So especially those of us who live out here in California, like myself, we see Teslas all over the place. They're like the cool thing to have out here, apparently. The idea behind Tesla, so at the beginning, they came out with this Roadster that you see on the far left, and they've gradually worked their way over to these Model 3 sedans that you see on the far right. The idea behind the production strategy was to start out with more expensive vehicles and produce less of them to work on quality, and also to hone in on the technology of the vehicles before they started to work into more of that mass production type of ideology. So now they're at the point where they're refining technology at a quicker speed. And just in March of last year, they produced their 1 millionth vehicle, which was a massive milestone in the industry and has debunked a lot of people who thought Elon Musk was crazy when he rolled out this vision years ago. So the big hack that came out was in relation to their Model X. A lot of the vehicles that they have come with standard connectivity, and basically this allows navigation and cell connection. It also enables video streaming, internet browsing, so all of those nice features. The other thing that it adds is that it can allow Tesla to update software over the air. So instead of a lot of us who maybe don't have a Tesla, we have to wait a whole new year for the next model vehicle to come out before we get that new tech. As Tesla, they can give it to you literally within minutes. So that's something that they have. Elon Musk always stresses that they're a hardware company, but they're also a software company. And so he puts equal emphasis on both of those. The idea being that they openly allow other companies to use their technology, with the idea being that their manufacturing at Tesla is second to none, and he thinks that that's what's going to sustain them. And so far, that's exactly what's happening. So Tesla has a very nice working relationship with what they call white hat hackers. Basically, these hackers are independent people that work to hack into various products, and companies basically offer them payment incentives to hack into their technology for them. It's a different perspective in terms of being able to find different routes into your code bases that maybe you haven't thought of, but it also opens you up to security vulnerabilities and a lot of high-risk threats. So for Tesla, obviously with vehicles that have over-the-air software updates, security is paramount at Tesla. So they definitely use a lot of these white hacking events. And just to kind of show like a real brief video. So within this 2-minute video, you'll see just how quickly this Tesla can be stolen. So as this is going through, basically the idea behind this hack, all the materials that you would need for this cost around $300. basically what he's doing is he has what's called a Raspberry Pi computer, and it's mounted to the vehicle's ECU. The ECU is basically responsible for, vehicle commands, starting, stopping the engine. In this case, on the Tesla, opening the doors and all of those electrical components as well. It also contains a lot of the vehicle sensors. So basically, if you have an ECU of a vehicle and can hack it into another vehicle's VIN number, you basically have full access to the vehicle. As you can see, he's pushing the malicious firmware to a key fob. You don't have to have the actual key fob from the vehicle you're trying to steal. You can just buy one off eBay and program it to whatever VIN number you want it to using this setup. And as you can see, all he has to do is walk near those people at the beginning of the video to be within the range to establish that connectivity. As you can see, he's basically opening the vehicle's doors, turn the lights on, turn the car on. You could probably play some music if you wanted to. And basically he's already inside the vehicle. Now, the second part of this hack, he had to figure out how to actually get the vehicle to work. So once inside, he found out that he could plug his own computer into a port. And basically this is accessible under the main dashboard panel. This part of the hack could be done in seconds and there's no tools required. And basically what happens is he pushes the signal. It's an encrypted certificate that gets pushes through. Kind of like for backend in mod 3, you'll learn a lot about APIs. So you'll see like how tokens and things are pushed through. It's kind of the same idea. He's pushing that through to gain access. And as you can see, he drove the vehicle away within 2 minutes. So the big thing about Tesla, obviously they love these hacks, but something like this hack was like, oh my goodness, that is not good. That could be a major problem for them moving forward. So basically, these are the materials, as I was saying. You could basically fit them into a backpack if you wanted to. So just the idea of, low cost. So not weeding out criminals that maybe don't have access to these high priced materials. So the security threat was very high for Tesla. Kind of walk through this part of it through the video. The main questions that this brings up is who should test the code that we write? Obviously we're testing the code, but should we open it up to outside people? Does that allow people to have too much info to access? And does that allow the opportunity to be too vulnerable in the sense of maybe we think we're doing good, but at the same time, you're kind of opening some back doors to some trouble that could sneak in. That kind of ties into the second question of what risks arise when implementing over-the-air software updates. And the last question, with software development continuing to evolve so quickly, how can security keep up as well? Is it possible? Is it moving too fast? How can we kind of strike that balance to protect ourselves and everyone else around us? And that's pretty much the extent of the presentation. Thank everybody for listening today.
Thanks, Cam. We've got like 2 minutes for questions if you got them.
So do you have a brand new Tesla now?
Nah, maybe after some of this first job turning money.
Well, I meant like, did you go steal one? But now that you know how.
I'm not telling. Cool. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, appreciate you, Cam. That was a cool presentation. Yeah, let's turn it over to Angela and Tyler.
Awesome. See and hear me okay? Great. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming today, and great job presenters who have already gone. My name is Tyler Fields, he, him, backend.
And I'm Angela Guardia, she, her, back end.
And we're here to talk to you about the future of AI, how the growth of artificial intelligence could affect the world as we know it, and how, as creators of these technologies, we have to be aware of the effects it will have on mankind. So I'm going to start us off with a little hypothetical time travel story. So let's say we go back in time 300 years and grab someone from the year 1720. Bring them back to today. It's impossible to know what kind of emotions this person would be feeling when seeing, big metal transportation objects driving by, like the one that Cam was just talking about. Being able to talk to someone on the other side of the world with the touch of a few buttons, capturing any moment in time on this little magical rectangle that we have. Or, going to some supermarket that has all the flour and corn you could ever want to buy, right? All equally mind-blowing. So what is the kind of shock that this person would be feeling, assuming that they don't die instantly, right? But let's say, this person is obviously incredibly shocked, but we've run out of our hypothetical allotted time travel time, and our 1720 friend has to go back. But we've inspired them. They want to show off their world to someone from the past, and they also have time travel capabilities, obviously. So they decide to go back the same amount of time, 300 years, to 1420, bring that person to 1720, show them around the farm and whatever else they've got. And that person's reaction is like, yeah, okay, that's cool. We have a lot of this stuff, but yeah, cool, thanks. They're not as impressed. And why not? Well, as we all know, technological growth is exponential. And not only that, but the rate of exponentiality is also exponential. We're growing so fast. So this person, instead of having to go back to 1420, would have to go back way further, possibly even tens of thousands of years, back to 12,000 BC, the beginning of, communication and all those good things. So because of this, each shock period, I'll call it, moving forward is going to be shorter than the one before it. And if what we've read from futurists is correct, we may be as shocked by the year 2040 or 2050 as our 1720 friend was coming to 2020. What technologies will be responsible for such drastic changes and make the world unrecognizable? Who knows? We do.
So what technology will make our world for us today unrecognizable in 30 years? And the answer to that is artificial intelligence. So when we say artificial intelligence, it's a pretty broad term that can encompass anything from the calculator on your phone to self-driving cars. So in this presentation, we won't talk about the specific technology, but we'll talk about the quality of artificial intelligence. So there are 3 calibers of artificial intelligence. We have narrow AI, general AI, and super intelligent AI. Narrow AI is better than a human at doing one thing. So like the calculator on your phone is much better than you at multiplying large numbers. And right now we live with a multitude of narrow AI and we interact with it all the time. The next step in artificial intelligence would be general AI. And that's artificial intelligence that is as smart as a human at doing most things. So it would have the ability to reason, to plan, to solve problems, and to understand complex ideas and learn. We haven't made this AI yet, but we are making our way towards it. The 2 main roadblocks for it are computational power, which gets cheaper and faster every year, and just the complexity of modeling a human brain, which we are also making advances in that. And then the final step would be super intelligent AI. So super intelligent AI is the kind of AI that general AI could build. And this is the kind of technology that we're talking about that might make our world unrecognizable by 2050. It would be a kind of technology that, or a kind of intelligence that is so beyond our scope of comprehension that it would almost be godlike. So to put that into perspective, we talked about the quality of artificial intelligence. We can also talk about the quality of biological intelligence. So we have here an intelligence staircase, and humans are at the highest level there because we're arguably the smartest species on Earth. And then a couple steps down, you have like a chimp, and then birds, and then maybe insects. So if you, as a human, tried to explain to an ant like the simplest concepts, like what is 1 + 1, you could spend your entire life trying to explain that, and the insect will never understand it. Our intelligence is at a level or in a scope that is completely beyond their comprehension. So let's imagine that we build artificial intelligence that is just a few steps above our intelligence. So it sits somewhere in the orange or red steps on the staircase. That intelligence would look at us the way we look at ants. It would try to explain things that for it would be very simple, but for us, they would be incomprehensible. So that, and I guess to put it more into perspective, if we look at the actual scale, when we talk about artificial superintelligence, we're talking about intelligence that is like way beyond anything that we will ever comprehend. And this is the kind of technology that may make the world in 30 years something that we can't even recognize.
So in terms of the near future, this new unbelievable technology is going to create new skilled jobs. So in the past, the growth of technology we've seen has created more jobs than it has taken, but that pattern is not necessarily guaranteed to continue. Take unskilled laborers from the 1920s, for example. Let's say a farm worker loses their job and then goes and gets a job at a factory building tractors. Or fast forward to 1980, someone working in a factory could get a new job as a cashier at a supermarket. And those two transitions are feasible with pretty limited retraining, right? But in the future, let's say a cashier at a supermarket loses their job to an artificial robot. Those people could hardly jump right into being a cancer researcher or drone operator or other AI teams. So while this is all speculation, these fast incoming changes will lead to a lot of questions moving forward that we currently don't have all the answers to.
So what will that look like for the future of work? So these changes will just completely change the way like our careers work. Today, like most professionals change jobs every few years. In the near future, we will have to change careers every few years. That will mean we'll have to be in a constant state of reinvention, and we'll have to go through a Turing-like experience multiple times in our careers. And as we all know, changing careers is a stressful experience. So this constant retraining, the volatility in the job market, it's just going to create a lot of uncertainty for working people. And it's going to have a lot of negative mental health effects for the workforce for a large number of people.
But who gets left behind? And in those examples, those effects are almost exclusively related to the skilled workers that we were mentioning before, right? So let's look at today and thinking about the certain communities that could be in jeopardy, and with skilled jobs becoming more prevalent, unskilled less important, that wealth gap will be widened, and poor communities or even third world countries, their lives could be changed completely. For example, there are millions of people who live in Bangladesh who make a living producing t-shirts and selling them to customers in the United States. Similarly, people in Bangalore earning their keep in call centers dealing with complaints of American customers. If these jobs were to disappear, how will all of those people survive? Well, with this possibility rapidly approaching, certain changes need to be made. Our social, economic, and political models of the past may become inadequate, and we'll need to reevaluate those as soon as possible, putting the importance of human lives ahead of the importance of human jobs. So thinking about those changes of those models that we'll need to look at, here are some current possible solutions that we have.
So currently there are some proposals to develop new social and economic models that can handle the amount of disruption that will happen in the workforce. And those two solutions could be universal basic income or universal basic services, which are basically giving people enough money for them to survive even if they don't work, or giving people access to free basic services so they can survive even if they don't work. However, despite these being the best solutions that we have, they're still kind of in their infancy when it comes to how to actually implement them. And you can see that just by asking very straightforward questions like, what is universal? So if a technology developed in Silicon Valley displaces millions of workers in Asia, will the American government tax the Silicon Valley company to pay a basic income to those workers in Asia? So what is universal? And then, well, what is basic? If a human needs 2,000 calories a day to survive, would a basic food service mean just giving them enough calories to survive every day, or giving them enough to thrive? Or where do we define basic? So yeah, despite these being the best solutions, there's still a long way to go. So what can we do about it, right? So as software developers, we may find ourselves being active contributors and creators with this technology. And there isn't much we can do about the way these socioeconomic programs are implemented, but we should consider it our responsibility to at least advocate for the people that will be impacted by these technologies, and just raise awareness and raise the social conscience so that we can implement those challenging solutions at some point and perhaps minimize the effects that these technologies will have on a large portion of the workforce.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you all. If anyone has any questions, ask them fast. Got like 1 minute.
Looks like it's all you, Drew.
Sweet. Can you hear me? Yay. Okay. What time is it? 2:04. Okay, here we go. Social media, misinformation. We are all aware that this is a thing, I'm sure. So I kind of did my focus on the actual MIT study on it. So MIT Sloan School, a bunch of PhD and tenured professors actually studied it, gave us statistics and things other than just, hey, this exists. So now we have figures. They found that fake news, misinformation peak online during election years. That probably doesn't surprise anybody, but falsehoods they found are 70% more likely to be retweeted on Twitter, and they also reach people 6 times faster than truth. Their first kind of publication of it came in Science magazine. They studied a bunch of stuff from 06 to 17, well over 100,000 stories, and fact checked with 6 organizations that agreed on things about 95 to 98% of the time. They found that falsehood significantly goes farther, faster, and deeper than truth. And they really wanted to find out how it related to political postings, and they found that their hypothesis was correct. Not all of it, but it was much more pronounced with politics than, say, news about terrorism, natural disasters, science, things like that. They also put a hypothesis together that they called the novelty hypothesis, saying that novel news was, or false news was more novel than true news, meaning, newer, more exciting, things that were unusual and things like that. They also found that bots accelerated true and false news at the same rate. So contrary to popular belief, false news is almost entirely spread by humans. Their hypothesis, I included some excerpts just because they are interesting, but the second one is cool. False rumors were more novel than true rumors, and that the users did not perceive them as such. And they also found that false rumors inspired more surprise, disgust, and things of that nature than truth. I think Matthew touched on this in his presentation for a hot second. And Catherine had a comment in the Zoom chat that said, is it interesting? Yes. Is it true? No. That basically sums up the hypothesis, the novelty hypothesis from these people. This should surprise no one, but they confirmed their hypothesis that people that shared fake news were more cognitively lazy than anything. David Rand from MIT said, our study suggests that falling for fake news is a symptom of cognitive laziness rather than motivated reasoning. Possible solutions. This is where it kind of gets interesting. The MIT professors had a 4-step plan. The gist of the plan, besides these bullet points, is they want to study it more. And to do that, they really want to, they have an ambitious idea of comparing fake news sharers with the sharers' geolocation from the metadata of their posts, and actually being able to use that location to look up their address and see how they voted. So their idea is probably never going to happen, I would assume, just because it sounds like a breach on privacy. That is my opinion, but we will talk about that, I guess. Advertising, some other MIT professors touched on advertising as the solution. 75% decrease in fake news once Facebook rolled out their new advertising system designed to detect misinformation. So that's nice. That's a good solution. How to respond. There are a bunch of studies out there saying that discourse and actual communication between people is the answer. MIT basically contradicted these and said yes and no, essentially. And MIT thinks really just, I don't really know what MIT thinks, and I think that's kind of the gist of my presentation. If I had to kind of sum up my biggest takeaway, it's that no one really knows or has any ideas of the best way to do this. The fact that MIT professors that studied this, their idea of how to solve it is to just study it more, essentially, is very telling to me. Also, the fact that another idea is just better discourse. And I've seen some examples of like how to lay out a DM if you're trying to communicate with people about their ideas being wrong. That involves people reading. And I think that disagrees with the overall statement that all of this is due to people's laziness. So yeah, we have like a minute. I kind of rushed through that. I apologize, but if anybody has any questions or ideas, I am open to thoughts.
I would say the biggest thing for me is that it seems like people are just not okay with not knowing. And so the fact that you came in and were like, you know what, here's what research says. I don't know, but here are the best ideas we have. I think that's badass and is exactly what we need more of.
Yeah. Well, I said it, but the thing that I wanted to get to with like looking up this and reading the entire MIT study was like, I want to know what their ideas were. And the fact that they just don't have anything that struck me as something that wasn't that great of an idea. Obviously, that's my opinion, but I just didn't think, it's just shocking to me that no one has really any great ideas. And the advertising one is fair. And that basically entails the social media companies to like do it on their own, which at this point is probably one of the better solutions, but there's nothing that's just absolutely amazing, I guess, as a solution. Cool. Is that it? Code Fair, hashtag Saturn Earth.
Yeah, we've got like 4 minutes. So if you have any questions that maybe you had for some of the presenters that we didn't have a chance to get to, I'd love to open it up for that before Code Fair at 2:15.
If there's nothing, I'm probably going to spend 3 minutes getting together with my group for Code Fair. Is that cool with you, Tim?
Yeah, I think you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
Hey, thanks, Tim.
Thank you all. Appreciate your presentations.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck the rest of the way.
Yes, thank you.
Next time I'll talk about the flux capacitor.